Perfect. All right, so I'm just going to be going through the template that is inside of each of your folders. You each have a template. I'll be going through that, and then after each template slide, there'll be an example slide. So the examples are going to be from a couple different inquiry presentations from previous years. So you'll get to see, they're not all going to be from one example. So the goals aren't going to match the focus question. So you're going to see some different people's examples. So it is important too, when you're following the template, that you have your title slides. So if it says something like presentation title, you want to make sure that you have that title slide, and then on the next slide, you give the information. So for a presentation and title slide, we have our example first grade writing, your name, and school site that you're at. The next slide is going to be an introduction of yourself. So your teaching assignment, your school site, and your need. So basically your need is going to be what your inquiry is about. So what was the need that you noticed in your class? And that's, what drove your inquiry. So as an example, we have, let's see, fourth grade, this person taught fourth grade virtual. She was at 2 different schools, so she put both of those. And then the need for her students that she noticed was that she needed strategies to help students become successful with division. And then, a picture or a Bitmoji. A lot of people use Bitmojis too. So your growth goals, the goals that we set at the beginning of your inquiry, you're going to list those both here. So you will both be on growth goal 3 and 4. You'll just put those both on this slide. So you just list them both. And again, you can add as much information as you want, but you definitely need to have obviously what it says. If you would like to add more, like this person added at the bottom, I will practice these goals by teaching writing. You can add anything that you want. You just have to make sure that you have what the template says you need. Did you have a question, Maribel?
Yeah, I didn't want to interrupt. So these are the ones we had picked on our inquiry, right?
Yes, at the that very top, right above your inquiry 3, those 2 growth goals.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. And then your focus question. So you'll just list your focus question there. That's obviously on your ILP document as well. Research. So what did you learn? In your ILP, in the research section, you want to take the information from there to include in your presentation. You don't need to take everything, right? You want to highlight certain parts, so you don't need to take all of your writing, but you definitely want to list where you got your research from, and maybe some key points like this person did. They boxed certain facts. They talked about the strategies, or they listed the strategies that they were using, and then some of their research here and where they got it from. So again, you can have as much as you want, but you definitely need to make sure you list all of the sources that you put in your IOP, and some highlighted facts from them. Action plan. So see how it says title slide there? You want to make sure that you have one slide that just says action plan, and then on the next slide, you'll actually put the information for your action plan. Or you can add a picture, a GIF. So then the next slide will be your strategy 1, which is part of your action plan. So the source that drove your strategy 1, your research source, the description of how you implemented it, and visual. So that's going to be the evidence that you added into your evidence folder of your strategy 1. So this person had their source was Dr. Nikki's guided math blog. They listed some of what they did. So review of 3rd grade strategies and gradual increase in complexity. And in her presentation, these kind of flew in, these pictures. So there's a couple different pictures there, but they're just basically examples from the math blog that she used. Same with strategy 2, the source, description of implementation, and visuals. So her second strategy was distributive property. Her source was number sense and numeration, grades 4 through 6 through the blog. How she implemented was using friendly numbers and partial quotients. And then she has an example there. And again, you can be much more detailed or have exactly what, it says to have there with examples. I think definitely some student, samples, student work samples, or, in your guys' case, you both did some SEL stuff and, some different kinds of things. So maybe playing, Jennifer playing part of your sounds that you used, and then showing some pictures that you used, Maribel, from your classroom.
Okay, I have a question on the source.
Okay.
It looks like maybe you can click the link on her slide. Do we
Yeah.
need to?
No, you do not need to make it clickable. I can't click it because it's a copy of a copy, so I can't click it right now, but I do think hers was linked to her source.
Okay.
Because it was a blog on the internet, so I think
Mhm.
she did link it, yes.
Okay.
So you definitely can do that, but you do not have to.
Okay, thank you.
So inquiry, evidence, and data. Again, this is the title slide, so we want to make sure that we have that title slide there. Just like she has the title slide first. And then data collection. So this is where you're definitely going to show your student work samples, or samples, actual samples of things that you implemented, copies of assessments, and data analysis. So this is going to be your pre and post assessment graphs. So this person was focusing on writing, obviously, and they gave some pre-assessment student work samples and then post-assessment student work samples. So, you can see the difference. Now, something that you both could put in here, since you both kind of did tallies, you could do the pictures that you uploaded of your tally of your actual data collection. You could use here your pre-assessment tallies versus your post-assessment tallies. You could also include the graph for both of those, the pre-assessment and post-assessment, on this slide as well. And then the graph representation of data collection. So this is where you're going to have that comparison graph where you have both the pre-assessment and post-assessment data on one graph and you compare it. This is just an example, and then this is just a video that helps you create that graph if you were struggling, but both of you made yours, so you're good to go with that. Nope, it's going to.
So let's create.
Okay. So on this slide, they kind of broke down their data. So they have their pre and post test comparison. And they just kind of listed some of the things they noticed. So some of their ahas from their data collection. So they noticed an increase in vocabulary recognition. In fact, family fluency. Preferred method was area model. So they noticed something during their test that the preferred method was area model, and overall increase in division knowledge. So they did list some notices. Now, that wasn't listed on the slide, but again, that's something really good to have on your slide for presentation purposes, for you to talk a little bit about your graph and some of the things that you noticed. So that would be something good to include. She also included average score of her pretest was 76 and average score of her post-test was 92%. So talking about, just kind of explaining, because everybody wasn't there in your class, explaining what the data means, especially when you're working with things like SEL or tally collection and things like that. Reflect and apply. So again, this is a title slide. So on your reflect and apply for this slide, you want to talk about what you learned from the inquiry. So what you learned going through the process. It could be about your students. It could be about yourself. I know, Maribel, we talked about certain things that we noticed a change in what we were doing in the classroom that helped the students as well. So certain things that you learned through your inquiry. So this person noticed that student needs lots of practice. Timely feedback makes a difference, and multiple uses of technology engage students. So just some big, a couple big things that you learned and just a little bit of information about that. And then, you can elaborate a little bit more in your presentation. So next steps. Next steps is going to be where you talk about, okay, I have all this information from my inquiry. I have all this data. Now what, right? Now, what can I do with this further? How can I continue to support my students in this area? So again, you can be as detailed as you want, or just highlight some key things. So this person's next steps were to continue with spiral review, incorporate similar strategies into other units, and small group supports. And that is your last slide. So that will be what you end your presentation on. A lot of people put like a question slide, like, does anyone have any questions? That's a good way to kind of, cut it off. So do you guys have any questions?
I do. Is there a certain amount of time that we have to present this in, or?
So the time limit is 10 minutes.
Okay.
But they say try to have it between 5 and 10.
Okay.
And then I think you both already know, but a little bit about your presentation format. Will be at JFK. We'll be split into different rooms. You guys will probably be presenting to a group of 8 to 10 people, depending on how many of administrators come. So it'll be a little bit of a different vibe for you guys than in fall. But yeah, it should be good. So as you guys are working on your presentations, this week, they're due next Wednesday. As you're working on them, if you have any questions or anything pops up, you can just let me know.
And you said administrators